Idan, welcome to Mitiga Mic.
Thank you, Brian. Very excited to be here.
So who the heck are you and what do you do?
I am Idan Cohen. I'm in Tel Aviv, close to Tel Aviv in Israel. I'm a cloud security analyst. I'm a senior one in the team. We're part of the investigation team where we provide basically the incident response, threat hunts, and also part of the MCDR services here in Mitiga. I focus mostly on performing threat detections and also assisting with the security research to identify new vectors and attack path of adversaries and implementing them into our CDR platform. And some of the time also assisting in the incident response effort.
You can just say you do all the cool stuff. I think that kind of sums it up. You get to research the cool stuff and respond to the scary stuff. But awesome. Well, hey man, thanks for being part of Mitiga Mic. I really want to dive into some research that you've done recently, which was around GitHub Actions. So I want to dive into the GitHub Actions compromise. So maybe you could kind of just frame for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with it. What exactly was that? What happened?
So let's take it back to the 14th of March, 2025. There was a post on one of the social platforms where someone linked a type security research about a recent compromise that they had a chance to investigate. As part of their investigation, they identified that there was a repository that is very widely used and is very common amongst many organizations. The name of it was changed files under the TJ action, which found with 20,000 of different organizations that are dependent on it. With that being said, they identified that a threat actor was able to inject malicious commands in it, specifically a script that allows a full memory dump within the GitHub Actions workflow. So initially causing everyone who's dependent on it to execute the workflow with the malicious commit, allowing them to dump all the memory, which resulted in a very big impact and allowed an exposure of many different secrets, ranging from access keys to secrets that are used by companies that don't want them to be leaked into the public sector. The repository was actually public, and the usage of it was being used by internal and private repositories on GitHub, and many were dependent on it. It was then followed with a post by Adnan Khan, which suggested that this compromise would maybe initially started with a different repository. And we can probably dive deeper into this, but this was the main compromise that we're discussing today, which is a supply chain attack, very impactful one and very critical one, as they may say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it got a lot of press. Well, I think most people watching this are probably familiar with GitHub, and if you're not, maybe you're not part of the dev community, or I'm not sure about GitHub, GitLab, Git, and there's a bunch of other repositories, but we all use it. It's become sort of a mainstay on the development side, and GitHub Actions and their related counterparts in other applications. It's all about workflow automation, right? So how and we all use it. So how is it that this workflow automation component of it actually became the target of this? It seems like I don't know if it seems like an unusual place to go after, but at the same time, it does seem kind of an unusual place to go after.
No, it sounds very unusual. And when you look into the GitHub Actions and the workflows, you can very quick identify that there's a potential of applying a really good impact and really making an impactful threat to any organization that uses GitHub Actions and workflows. And when you take that into consideration and you compare it to, let's say, for example, exploiting or compromising an EC2 instance in AWS or even any workstation, you know that the impact you're going to have is very limited in comparison to actually compromising a full workflow that could have a wider impact on an organization. And with GitHub Actions running automatically in response to any events like PRs, commit, or issue commands, attackers can abuse those, and it triggers to inject malicious inputs, and especially when workflows are not properly validated or scoped in any sort of way. So that really explains why threat actors are going into this vector and looking into those tactics and techniques.
Yeah. So it's almost as if they're taking advantage of maybe people being a little cavalier how they're setting up their workflows. They're not putting the constraints in. The same thing could be applied to web application attacks and SQL injection, right? In terms of like parameter checking. It's just they're doing it quick and dirty. They're getting it set up, and they're not really doing it with a security mindset. It sounds like so that makes sense. So
Yeah.
let's double click on that a little bit. So what actual vulnerabilities were exploited in this process?
So in terms of vulnerability, there was one recorded, a CVE that was recorded for it to track this event. But in terms of what happened there, this is not necessarily an exploit, but rather workflow misconfiguration, which allows accepting untrusted inputs from forks or public PRs without any sufficient check. So for those who are not familiar with it, you can basically submit any code that you want into a public repository and become an author and just help with the open source community and really help it develop and fix whatever you see. It also helps very much for your resume, of course, when you apply with it. So this allows, in terms of this misconfiguration, it allows threat actor to commit malicious code, malicious scripts, or anything that they found to be useful for them. And basically, those repositories are not pinning those commits with their hashes. So for every commit, there's a hash, there's a signature that you can identify that this is a legitimate commit. In this case, those commits were applied with an ID instead of a hash. So the threat actor was able to basically compromise every single version of this workflow automation and making the whole repository compromised, since it's not using the proper hashes that it needs to, and it's not pinning down all of those signature to make sure that no one can change them with an unverified commit. This is what exactly, in terms of the impact of the CVE that we're speaking of. But there was a CVE that was being tracked, and there's a note of it, of course, in the CVE details, and many databases that they are for tracking CVEs.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this attacker or attackers was just trying to build their resume.
That's a good idea, actually. That's a good. I had the assumption that maybe there was some security research tied to all of it.
Right. Who knows? Who knows? Crazier things have happened. Well, let's switch gears a little bit from the actual attack and kind of look at this from a defender's perspective. So, what are some best practices that individuals or organizations should take when looking to secure, I don't know, CI/CD pipeline on GitHub? Specifically those that are targeting GitHub Actions.
Yeah, of course. This is a very reasonable one, even after this event that happened. I would say using pull request target carefully is the initial one, because we need to all make sure that we're applying some careful consideration into actions that we're taking and within our workflow and automations. It is powerful, but it's dangerous whenever you don't have the proper validation. So validating whatever pull request we have is very crucial. Scope and permissions is always good. Scope every permission that you have. This is the security best practice. I'm pretty sure this is in everywhere in terms of applying recommendations and mitigations for anything. The third one I would say is avoiding execution of code from forks directly. And if we're being general in terms of the CI/CD pipeline and GitHub, using reusable workflows with proper controls will standardize secure execution. So this is also a very crucial one. I would also suggest to try and looking into scanning workflows. There are many code, many scanning tools. I think GitHub even has one, or even a third-party one would be great. Just scan your workflow, make sure that you're in line with any of these policies, and making sure that you don't have critical misconfiguration that allow threat actors to take advantage of. And I think the last one would be isolating jobs, avoiding reusing artifacts or environment data between trusted and untrusted jobs. So that would be the general one I would suggest for secure CI/CD pipeline.
Well, let me ask you about this, because Idan, there's a lot of talk, and it's not necessarily new. It's newer, perhaps, about non-human identity, right? And non-human identity is interacting with certain assets. Any tips for detecting, anomalous activity, maybe even bots, things of that nature across GitHub?
So let's be honest. The first one I would say, is first of all making sure you have all the proper logs.
Yeah.
Many companies just disregard the logs and just say, all right, we have audit logs. We have audit logs enabled. We're pretty perfect in terms of reviewing and making sure that we don't have any anomalies. So that's a false claim. Even audit logs, when they are enabled, they're not necessarily enabled with an IP address. So you may see all the actions that you have in terms of audit logs, but you won't be able to identify who's the IP address, who's the actor behind those operations. But if we put all these audit logs aside, um, many companies disregard the usage of taking advantage of the build logs, the workflow logs that you can receive from GitHub, and you can basically monitor all of this. And with these logs, and with that being said, I would suggest to start implementing some detection mechanisms. I mean, pretty sure everyone has some sort of a security engineer, detection engineer, to apply a behavioral monitoring. With that sudden spikes that you can see with those abnormal actions, and with a proper architecture or an engineer in the company, you can pretty much analyze and understand what's legitimate and what's not. And also rate limiting. Rate limiting is a perfect approach, flagging accounts, making frequent API calls, or interacting with workflows abnormally is part of the anomaly detection. So that's very crucial to make sure you're in line with those. And if you have the ability to implement some detection mechanism for that, that would be great. And let's get back to the audit logs ones. In terms of the audit logs, I would say it is recommended to always make sure you have detections for them. This is very crucial to review any access or identifying some different patterns. Those have a lot of value that everyone can take advantage of. And I'm pretty sure with IP addresses being implemented into these logs, you can make valuable detections, and you can make really necessary ones for applying. And with IP addresses, reputation checks, with any intelligence that you have, um, that would be an easier way to identify non-human identity across GitHub bots
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that can be done with IP addresses in terms of basic threat intel that says, hey, I've got 6 threat intel solutions, and 5 of them are saying this is a bad IP, or it's tied to a Tor exit node, or it's related to command and control, or any number of bad things. It seems like
Yeah,
just a checkbox, like let's just do this one, right?
it is the minimal one you can do at least.
Yeah. Well, we can still talk about GitHub, but I want to expand it a bit broader to just SaaS platforms overall. Again, you talked about having a proper engineer in place. How can those engineers sort of enhance their detection capabilities, if you will, to maybe not just identify but actually mitigate these potential breaches, and maybe even prevent them from happening altogether?
Hopefully, if we all can. As much as we know, 100% on security is not a real thing. It's a matter of when, and not a matter of if it's going to
Yeah.
happen. But that's true. That's an approach that every security engineer would need, which is considering using products. Even building your own products is very good. Integrating with any SIM or XDRs or CDRs that you can put into place is a great start. Basically, collecting all the logs, collecting everything you need to gather all that into some sort of a way to create some detections and create the simple logic or the basic logic for that. In terms of SaaS, there's a really increase on um, threat actors focusing on SaaS products. This allows a lot of impact, and there's a lot of things you can do from there. Once you get the initial access, that's an insane vector that you can leverage and take advantage of. And we've seen many breaches starting from Slack or even Zendesk or some stuff like this, which are pretty familiar for the day-to-day use that we use. But I would say focusing first of all with integrating with a proper detection response system, a product, anything that would allow you to get the full picture. Let's start with this. Then when you continue with the SaaS, leverage every log that you have. So logs is a very crucial thing for starting to even analyze or provide a simple analysis of what happened, what could happen, maybe bring the whole picture of what's my posture in this case? Am I aligning with the security best practices? Is the GRC in line with what we are doing on a day-to-day basis? So I would say, first of all, logs. Wherever you can, just monitor this. Using any also secret scanning. I mentioned this before. I would mention it every time I can. Scan your secrets whenever you possibly can. This is crucial for you to know what secrets could have been exposed. Monitor this and also rotate them on a day-to-day basis, or create some mechanism to properly rotate them and make sure they're in good use. If we're speaking even step further, create some honeypots workflows to detect some malicious probing. This is a good approach. I've seen companies do that, and that seems to work very good. I would, of course, put in line Mitiga's CDR. We have coverage and detection coverage for SaaS and cloud products, which we're always expanding in terms of the coverage, and we're always making sure that we're a step ahead of threat actors. So that's a perfect example for everyone who needs. And I would say periodic security reviews is also a good approach. Making sure you audit workflows, permissions, integrations in a routine base is a good approach to, first of all, making sure you're identifying and mitigating any potential breaches that we have.
Yeah, that's such fantastic advice. And I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, you talked a little bit about secrets, and I'm sure our viewers know, but maybe some people don't. It's secrets aren't just like a username and password. They're strings, they're tokens, they're database information. There's all sorts of things in there that are sensitive, and you can pull that from a repository. You know, get through single sign-on. Now I'm in Slack. Now I'm in Office 365. Now I'm in your S3 bucket on AWS. So it's nobody, you know, attackers aren't saying, I just want to attack this one thing or this one business unit. They don't care about that, right? I want to see how far the mesh is going to take me, right? How far can I spread? And it might be to supply chain partners, it might be to other strategic relationships, and it goes on and on. So yeah,
All of a
rotate those
sudden,
secrets.
lateral movement became so easy, and
Oh,
all of a sudden you're jumping from different platforms and you're collecting different information, leveraging all that to a more wide scale attack. That's a very good attack.
absolutely. Well, Idan, where can our viewers get more information on this research and perhaps other research that you and the team have done, and kind of read more and sort of get into the bits and bytes of the technical details?
So that's a good one. You can find the full write-up and technical breakdown of what we have in the research paper in our website in mitiga.io. I could also add a link to it. Also on our LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure on mine, and as well as my colleague, which was part of this whole investigation, which is Ariel from the security research team. You can find the information on both of our LinkedIn and Mitiga's LinkedIn. There's many detections that we try to cover in terms of how to provide a really better approach on detection and detecting some unusual non-human identities in terms of bots or actors that are hiding behind those identities. And there are some good examples over there that anyone can apply with really basic code and explanation. And I'm pretty sure everyone can leverage that and use any LLM tool to split it and take whatever they need, switch that to any language that they're using and implement it. That would be a good approach for everyone. But yeah, you can find there the full write-up and technical breakdown and everything in there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you hear it here. Check out Mitiga.io. So thank you, Idan, for being part of Mitiga Mic. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. Appreciate it. It wasn't very good.